So today we're going to go all out and I'll show you how to make a basic, emulsified and a foaming whipped sugar scrub. 3 different types at 3 different levels. And by the way, these sugar scrubs just so happen to make for the perfect gift. You're welcome. So if there is an ultimate sugar scrub, we're going to make it today.
So to ease you guys in, we're going to start with a low effort sugar scrub. Seriously, it's 2 ingredients, 60 seconds, and everyone can make this. Begin by waltzing into a kitchen, preferably yours, and grabbing a bag of sugar. It's really that simple. Regular granulated white sugar has the perfect size granules for an all-over body scrub. Measure out 200 grams of sugar along with 50 grams of oil. I like using almond oil because it has a body to it that feels amazing on the skin, but you can use whichever oil you like. Mix together so that each and every grain of sugar is coated in oil. And that's it.
Okay, this is far better than a 2 ingredient DIY sugar scrub has any right to be. But what's not to love? Sugar is a great natural exfoliator, and when you combine that with a moisturizing oil, it leaves your skin soft and supple, but most notably not stripped. If I had to pick, I would say that its main drawback is that it's a little irritating to use. It has this beautifully light sorbet texture, but there's nothing to actually bind the oil and sugar together, meaning that it's incredibly crumbly when you apply it to your skin and difficult for it to stay put. And of course, because this is just oil and sugar, you can't get any water in the container, meaning that there's no double dipping, and that can be a little impractical to use. But if our starting point is this good, then you're in for a real treat with the next recipe.
Playtime's over. Next up, we have a fan favorite emulsified sugar scrub. It is a couple more ingredients, but still really simple to make. The first of many upgrades is that we're using butters as well as oils. I'm using a combination of mango and cocoa butter. Mango has that light crumbly texture, whereas cocoa butter adds a richness to the sugar scrub formula. And because this is an emulsified sugar scrub, we'll need, well, an emulsifier. BTMS, you can use either 50 or 25, has natural slip that increases the spreadability of the scrub. But you can substitute this with any regular emulsifying wax. Sorry, beeswax is not going to cut it here. To that, add 4 grams of cetyl alcohol. That also helps with slip and texture. And then we'll need to add in the oils. I'm going to stick with almond oil because I think it works great in this emulsified sugar scrub. But we're also adding 30 grams of fractionated coconut oil. Coconut oil is able to penetrate deep into the layers of your skin, so even after the scrub is rinsed off, you'll still be able to feel its moisturizing benefits. Once everything is combined, we can move on to heating. Whenever you're working with natural butters and oils, it's best to use a low, gentle heat so that you don't damage the integrity of your ingredients or get that grainy texture in your products. All in all, this took about 20 minutes to melt completely, with routine stirring to make sure that everything melted evenly. Once there are no solids remaining, take off the heat and whisk thoroughly to ensure that the oils, butters and emulsifiers are blended together. Add in your preservative. Here I'm using Optifen so that if any water is introduced into the scrub, we have some protection against bacteria and mold. And I'm also using vitamin E oil as a natural antioxidant, and that fights against oxidation. Again, make sure that everything is thoroughly mixed in before we can move on to adding some fun stuff. Mica powders are natural mineral pigments that are great for adding a little extra something to these sugar scrubs. A little really goes a long way here, so I'm only adding in a small amount to get this beautiful pale pink colour. Now, fragrance is always optional, but I highly recommend adding in some essential oils. I'm using lavender essential oil for its sweet and calming fragrance, but you're welcome to use whatever fragrance you'd like.
Wow, this is a lot of information about sugar scrubs. If only there was a written recipe, ideally in metric and imperial. Wait, there is?
That's right, there is. Click the free recipe link in the description box below or visit WholeElise.com. And now we're finally ready for the sugar part of this emulsified sugar scrub. Again, I'm using granulated white sugar just to keep these formulas consistent, but I've listed some other options that you can use in the written recipe. Combine the emulsified sugar scrub base along with 80 grams of sugar to start. Here's where you can determine the final texture of your scrub. For a looser consistency, stick to my measurements, but if you'd prefer a more solid scrub, then you can add in more sugar. But don't forget that these scrubs will firm up over the next 24 hours, so even though it has a runnier consistency now, you can see the difference the next day.
I actually feel like this is going to be an awakening product for you guys, because once you make this, there is just no way you can go back to store-bought. This gives you that really deep exfoliation because the scrub really clings to your skin. And of course, because we did use emulsifying wax, you get that creaminess as soon as you mix the scrub with water. Another thing that makes emulsified sugar scrub so great is the fragrance. Because it stays in contact with your skin for longer, it really gives you a lasting fragrance. So all of the beautiful essential oils that we use linger throughout the day. There is honestly no comparison between an emulsified sugar scrub and a basic recipe. But as good as this sugar scrub is, there is still another level. Oh yes.
And saving the best for last, we're going real fancy with this foaming whipped cleansing sugar scrub. Let's start with the foaming part. You'll need 36 grams of sodium cocoa isophyonate, which I know sounds dubious, but hear me out. This is a powdered surfactant famous for being one of the gentlest cleansers around. In fact, it's commonly used in baby products, hence the name baby foam. Not only does it have a great lather, but because it's a solid surfactant, it'll help make a whipped sugar scrub. Now, while SCI is completely safe to use on your skin, you might have noticed the white particles floating in the air. As pretty as they are, this is not something you want to breathe in, so make sure you wear a mask and work in a well-ventilated area. To that, we'll need to add another more familiar surfactant, cocamidopropyl betaine. I've used this in quite a few of my formulas before, as it further boosts the scrub's cleansing abilities. I'm adding in a little distilled water, and because this scrub not only exfoliates and cleanses, but also hydrates your skin, we'll need to use some humectants. You're probably familiar with glycerin, but to avoid making this scrub too sticky, I'm also using sorbitol, which is a lighter but far more powerful humectant. Add this to your surfactants and mix together until you get this sort of gloopy, homogeneous texture. Leaving that to one side, let's move on to the oils. This is more straightforward. I'm using 10 grams of mango butter, a regular emulsifying wax. Here I'm using Olivium 1000. Sorry to break it to you, but once again, beeswax won't work here. And to make our scrub solid enough to whip, we'll need stearic acid to thicken the base. This ensures that the foaming whipped sugar scrub has body, but isn't too oversaturated with oils and butters that can feel heavy on the skin. I'm also using 14 grams of fractionated coconut oil for all the benefits that I mentioned earlier. Once you have your oil and water phases prepped, we can melt these down over a low, gentle heat. It won't look like much is happening with the surfactants at first, but eventually they'll start to loosen up and become runny. When they're completely melted, take off the heat and immediately whisk the oil phase into the surfactants. It'll only take about 30 seconds for it to form into a weird, semi-transparent, gel-like structure. I'll admit it looks a little funky, but this is actually what we want. When you've mixed it as well as you can, allow it to cool and continue to set until it turns opaque and starts to have a similar consistency to mango butter. At this point, we can add in our non-negotiable preservative. Here I'm using Preservative Eco, but any broad spectrum preservative will do. And to that, I'm going to add in vitamin E oil as our antioxidant. Now that our foaming sugar scrub base has thickened, it's a little harder to mix, but take your time and ensure that the preservatives are fully dispersed throughout. Again, I highly recommend adding a couple fragrant essential oils to get that spa-like experience when you use this scrub. And of course, using pigment powders will create a unique, one-of-a-kind look. This is also the icing on the cake for anyone looking to make these as gifts for the holiday season. And now, what you've all been waiting for, let's make this a whipped foaming sugar scrub. Use an electric whisk to not only whip up the base, but also mix in the colour. There's no need to refrigerate the scrub like you would with a body butter. I've designed this formula to whip up nicely as is. When the base becomes aerated and thick and oh so creamy like this one, we can add in our exfoliants. Again, I'm using granulated white sugar just to keep all 3 sugar scrub recipes consistent. But to take this recipe one step further, I'll also add in an insoluble exfoliant to increase the level of exfoliation. Sugar will dissolve in water, so mixing in an exfoliant that will remain firm while you massage the scrub into your skin allows for deeper exfoliation. I'm using these beautiful black poppy seeds that work really well on thicker or rougher areas of skin. To ensure that this scrub isn't too abrasive on your skin, you'll only need to use a small amount.
I mean, does it get any more decadent than a whipped, foaming, cleansing sugar scrub? No, it does not. I actually thought these types of scrubs were a gimmick until I made it and started using it. First off, this has all of the strengths of the previous scrubs, but it's even creamier, and it clings to the skin better, so you don't end up losing half your product to the shower floor. But then it takes it up a notch. That mix between soluble and insoluble exfoliants. Click the free recipe link in the description box below for more information on that, by the way. But that's what makes it a more intense scrub. And then when you add the fact that it has whipped creamy mango butter as well as foaming capabilities, it just takes it to a whole nother level. The fact that this scrub is able to cleanse as well as exfoliate your body really makes this an all-in-one product. So not only is your skin soft and supple, but it's actually clean because this was able to clean away excess dirt and debris. You just can't ask for any more than that. And yes, it was more ingredients, but it makes up for it in the experience. Okay, we just breezed through how to make a basic, emulsified, as well as a whipped foaming sugar scrub. 3 different types at 3 different levels.